talking about the internet, I was thinking this morning of when I first looked at the internet when I went to university in 1996, and one of the first websites I looked at, being the kind of political nerd that I was and arguably still am, was the Conservative Party website. And I remember it was the most, bizarre site with so little on it, and there was a picture of John Major on the front with this little quote saying something about all the major advances in technology have happened under Conservative governments, and here's the latest one. And there was a link to, a thing called the Conservative Technology Forum, as if this internet thing was going to only interest a few computer nerds, and that was going to be the end of it. And of course, in the last 13 years, the advances have just been so great, and who could have predicted the way things were going to go and how they are going to go. One of the questions which Laura sent to me in advance in terms of things she wanted me to address was whether partisan but not formally allied sites like ConservativeHome challenge or support political parties, and I thought I'd just perhaps touch slightly on that as a prime issue. My quick answer would be to say is that they can do both, actually, and that ConservativeHome has demonstrated this very ably over the years. I've only been there for about 4.5 months at ConservativeHome. The site was actually founded about 4 years ago by Tim Montgomery, my co-editor, and it was founded around the time of the leadership election in 2005, and one of its prime purposes right at that beginning then was to stop the party leadership from taking away the right of individual members to get a vote in that party leadership election. And that was a battle which the site won, and the party leadership and the establishment was defeated on that issue. And that's a prime example of how sites such as ours have challenged and successfully challenged the party establishment, and rightly so. That said, it also obviously is broadly supportive of the party. We would see our role as being, I think in Peter Kilfoyle's term, a critical friend. The party, when it comes to a general election, we're going to, or any election, we want people to vote Conservative. We obviously support David Cameron becoming Prime Minister and Conservative MPs being elected and so on and so forth. That goes without question. But arguably during election periods, there will, I think, probably be a need for more discipline and on our part in terms of doing our bit towards that. But certainly, for the most part, most of the time, it's quite right that we should be able to challenge the party when we think it's perhaps not doing the right thing. Are there threats to unity through these sites? Not really. I mean, certainly no more than exist already. Political parties have always been broad churches with a wide range of opinions, and people within those parties have always found media outlets to make those views clear. I mean, so that's not something new. But in a sense, a site like ours, I think, does have a role in kind of democratizing things and giving people that feeling that they've got more of a say about what goes on and that their view can count. I mean, as I mentioned just now, the Conservative Party historically has made some attempts to reduce the power of individual members, but through sites like ours, their voice can be heard. We do monthly surveys of party members' opinions, where we're regularly getting a couple of thousand party members putting their views on a whole range of issues, rating the shadow cabinet and taking samples of views. And another example of where we were really ahead of the game, but also campaigning within the party, was on the notion of matching Labour's spending plans. ConservativeHome said, well before it was party policy, that we didn't think it was right to match Labour's spending plans over the next how many years, and the party eventually relented. And we'd like to think that we had a role in pushing that forward, and also making the leadership know what the grassroots were feeling about that issue. Talking more generally about the use of modern technology and so on, there are huge opportunities there, and lots of MPs and candidates are embracing them. I think email is an incredibly useful tool for MPs and candidates to effectively cut out the middleman of local newspapers or television or whatever, in order to get their voices heard directly by the voters. But then, you've also got to be careful about this. I mean, there's a during election campaigns, and in fact all year round, you obviously get leaflets being put through people's letterboxes, and my general view would be that if you get loads and loads of leaflets from one candidate through letterbox, which the Lib Dems are pretty expert at, they create this notion that this person's incredibly hardworking and omnipresent, whereas actually my suspicion is that if you bombarded people with emails every day, actually you're going to annoy them, and you've got to be far more careful about how you use that. That said, you can target very, very specifically, and the candidate should be collecting email addresses for potential constituents during the course of their candidacy. But during that time, they can work out what particular issues particular people have strong views on, and clearly tailor the messages that they send selectively to those people in terms of what the issues are that they're interested in. That's definitely a huge, huge opportunity. The Conservative Party has made great use of video technology now. The kind of web Cameron stuff enables David Cameron or whichever party spokesman regularly to be able to put clips up on the internet, which again get the message direct to voters without the middleman of the national or local media. It's not necessarily just the soundbite that gets out there, but you get a few minutes of perhaps a slightly longer explanation of what they're saying and why they're saying it, which is a healthy thing. And of course, Facebook, I think, is a great tool. Another thing that I think candidates are finding very useful for is being able to find issues that are going on in their constituencies. They will, if there's a local hospital under threat, then there'll be a Facebook group campaign to save that hospital or whatever, and they can engage with debate on there. And those kind of issue groups are things which aren't necessarily going to be attracting people who are traditionally party political, but it's a way of getting that candidate getting a feel for what people are saying outside of the normal party political banter, but to engage with those people. That said, traditional campaigning methods are still important. You can't leave it entirely to the internet, although all parties, I think, are suffering in terms of membership figures, membership activist numbers. So they're spread a bit more thinly. But door knocking is still important. I was talking to an American friend just last week, who had been out knocking on doors and delivering leaflets during the American election last November. Some of the right media reports, you'd think that they didn't do this anymore, but they do. So it's still important, definitely. And MPs, I despair of the fact that there are still MPs who don't even have a website, actually. And there are MPs in all parties who I think are guilty of this. And the notion that you can ignore the internet at this stage is just preposterous. And I think it's incredibly complacent of members of Parliament to ignore it. I think certainly no newly selected candidate for any party is not going to be able to get away with not doing that. And I think some of these people may have safe seats and think, oh, well, I don't need to bother. But I think that's irresponsible. I think that's wrong. I think they also may see perhaps a small effect in their majority if that's the attitude they're taking. It's not very healthy for democracy and trying to engage with people. Finally, just to pick up on something that Mark was saying, just talking about the power of sites like ours. I mean, clearly, they can be powerful because they are looked at by all the mainstream media as well. And just in the last couple of weeks, there's a couple of stories which I broke through ConservativeHome, which then were all over the national media the following day. And in that sense, it's an exciting thing to be doing. And who knows what the future holds. It's a big unknown world, but things are moving forward, and watch this space.